Hi, everybody. Hello. Thank you for joining. Good morning, afternoon, evening, wherever you are. Hope you're doing well and excited as us as we are today for this session. The more participants are joining, so we can get started. So let me welcome everybody again. Today, this is our VVB Quarterly Training for Q2. My name is Anna Cuglitore, and I'll be your host for today. As the name of the meeting says, we're talking today about gold standard updates related to Q2 of this year. And we have allocated an hour and a half for this meeting, so hope you have time to stay with us for the whole session. Otherwise, we'll be sharing the recording afterwards. Don't worry. And also wanted to say that this is our second session. We hosted the same session yesterday morning, with the same content. So if you joined yesterday, welcome back. You're also more than welcome to stay, especially for questions and answers that might be relevant. And I will be giving you a little bit more information soon about the agenda topics as we navigate to the agenda slide. But first, let's start with some house rules. As I said, we're recording this session and we'll be sharing the recording and slides with all of you participants at the end of the session. And if you have any questions, you can put them in the Q&A box or raise your hand during the Q&A part of the meeting. And I'd like to start first with a little icebreaker, because that's always nice to get our energy up. I'm going to launch a poll in Teams, so it should appear on your screen, but you can also scan the QR code that you see on the screen. And I am going to also copy paste the link in the chat or Q&A box, Q&A in this case, so that maybe it's easier for you to reach. Hope many of you participate. Very easy questions today. Where are you joining from? And whoop, I went too fast. How do you learn best? What's your preferred way of learning? Is it with visual, listening, reading, or by doing things? And how was your Q2? We're talking about us today, but first we want to hear from you as well. How was it for you? How did you experience it? So let's see, where are you joining from? I see very big India also today, very nice, but also Germany, Netherlands, Brazil, Turkey, United States. Nice. It's nice to see some new countries than yesterday. And China. Nice. Okay. Welcome all of you. It's nice to have you. And let's say, learning, how do you like to learn? How do you prefer? Okay, I see that the majority you're preferring to learn by visual, so charts, slides, and videos, and also by doing, so with examples and case study. So that's great. Yesterday we had very similar answers indeed, so that's very nice. And later we will also tell you why we're asking this. So a little cliffhanger there. And how was your Q2? I'm happy to see most of you had a good time, productive and smooth. That's nice to hear. Great. Thank you so much for participating. And let's now get to business. So the agenda of today. Before I go to the agenda, of course, I'd like to introduce our speakers from the Gold Standard team. Today with us, we have Anshika and Shraddha from the Standards team and Giovanna and Marta from the Oversight team. And they will be presenting our topics for today. So as you can see on screen, we have quite a long agenda, which is a mix of new updates and calibration. And this is because we are combining our monthly training updates with the quarterly calibration training this month. So we will not be hosting a session in August due to summer holidays, but this session is combining a little bit of both. And above that, spoiler alerts for the next quarter, in September and October, we are planning 2 face-to-face calibration workshops. And you will hear about this a little bit later as well in the session, so stay tuned. And going back to the agenda for today, we will start with some key standard updates, where Anshika will be talking about updates on the SDG impact tool and giving us some examples and tips. And Shraddha will be giving us some updates in the Luft sector on risks and capacities and some important rule clarifications as well that were published in the previous in the Q2. Then there will be some time for calibration and alignment on topics like audit reports and findings, some other clarification and updates related to assurance platform, and a few important updates, requirements on safeguards and stakeholder inputs. And then there will be hopefully time left for some other news, including methodology alignment with Article 6.4, and finally as well information about our face-to-face workshops. And at the end of each section, we'll be having a short Q&A. So then you have the chance to ask your questions, raise your hand, or add them to the Q&A box. So that we can do it that way. I'll stop talking now and I'll introduce our first item of the day. So Anshika will be talking about the SDG impact tool and indicators. Over to you, Anshika.
Thanks a lot, Anna, and hi everyone. So today we are going to talk about the SDG impact tool and how to effectively validate and verify the reported SDG impacts by the project developers. Next slide, please. So first of all, let's begin with a quick overview of the SDG impact tool. So today we are going to talk all about SDG impact reporting and its validation and verification. Next slide, please. So first of all, let's talk about what are the auditor's responsibilities. So as auditors, your role is to ensure the integrity and the robustness of the SDG impact claims. And this includes, number one, to confirm the indicator selection. You need to confirm, have indicators been chosen from the preset list in the GS4GG impact tool or not? The next very important point is to ensure the appropriateness of the indicators. Are the indicators relevant to the project's technology and climate goals, or are they not at all relevant to the direct impact of the project implementation? Number three is about assessing the MRV adherence. Is the measurement, reporting, and verification guidance being followed rigorously for each indicator or not? Do you see any gaps in the MRV guidance which is being developed or which is being proposed or implemented by the project developers? Is the MRV in line with the preset guidance which is given in the SDG impact tool? Is it being implemented in the way it is being described in the SDG impact tool or not? Last but not the least, of course, validating or verifying the reported values. Are the reported figures accurate, complete, and are they backed by evidence or not? Next slide, please. Now let's talk about each one of them in detail. So number one, talking about how to confirm the indicator selection of the project developer. So as auditors, you must always confirm that indicators are selected strictly from the preset matrix in the SDG impact tool. This will ensure not only consistency, but also comparability across the projects. So recently, we did observe a few instances where the project developers had erroneously manually overridden the SDG impact tool, and they had included their own indicators before they had submitted it for validation, because the project developers thought that this is a way that they can propose new monitoring indicators. And the VBs were not able to identify this manual overriding because this was not very obvious. Thus, I want to share today a very quick tip here that will help you identify any such instances if you see them in future. So for every instance or every indicator in the Excel tool, you need to click on the monitoring indicator. You see the screenshot over here. This is from the Excel-based SDG impact tool. This is one indicator titled renewable energy generation. So if you click on that name of the indicator and you look at the formula bar, you will see a formula being entered there because that input is coming from a preset matrix, which is there in another sheet of the SDG impact tool, which is already protected. And the PDs or any stakeholders cannot make any changes in those sheets. So if you go to the formula bar and if you see a formula, then it's coming from the preset matrix. But if in the formula bar you see a plain text, that means it is being manually entered in the SDG impact tool. So you need to raise these instances with the project developers and ask them to either propose the new indicators to gold standard using the template and the process which is available, or they use the preset indicators for the technology type. And if you identify such an instance during verification, then it is your responsibility to ask the PDs to seek a design change and then align their SDG impact reporting with the impact tool. Next slide, please. Next, and a very important point is about verifying the appropriateness of the indicator. So when any auditor is assessing the appropriateness of the indicators, they have to consider two aspects. Number one, contextual relevance. Number two is a direct linkage. So talking about the contextual relevance, auditors need to think, do the indicators reflect the specific technology and its SDG impacts or not? For example, a solar project should focus on renewable energy indicators. If you do not see a direct correlation in the context of the project implementation and the SDG impact indicator, which is being chosen by the project developers, then you may raise a CL or a CAR asking for justification from the project developers. Next very important point is the direct linkage of the indicator. Is there a clear causal link between the project's activities and the selected indicators? We have to avoid generic or loosely related indicators at all cost. The SDG impact that is being claimed by the project developer has to be a causal effect of the project activities implementation and nothing that is pretty generic or not directly linked to the implementation of the project. So these are the things that auditors need to check when they are checking for the appropriateness of the chosen monitoring indicators. Next slide, please. Talking about the third point in the responsibilities of the auditors is on assessing of the MRV procedures. So the GS4GG tool provides detailed MRV guidance. As an auditor, your job is to assess whether the project developers are following it or not. This will include number one, documentation review. Are data sources and methods clearly described? Are you able to trace the information back? Do you have a clear justification and explanation on what document has been used to fetch information for this monitoring indicator? If yes, good to go. Next is the methodology alignment. Is the actual practice aligned with the guidance or not? Is the project developer using exactly the same MRV which is given in the tool? Or if there are any flexibilities provided in the MRV of the monitoring indicator, are they implementing those flexibilities or taking decisions based on the appropriateness and contextual relevance of the project activity or not? Third, a very important point is the quality assurance. Are there controls in place to ensure data accuracy and completeness or not? So following these key points will ensure that the reported SDG impacts are based on sound and also verifiable data. Next slide, please. The last point in the responsibilities of the auditors is validating the reported values, validating or verifying the reported values. So for the purpose of validating or verifying the reported values, an auditor must ideally do four things. Number one, discuss the source documentation. An auditor must review original documents like invoices or contracts or surveys that the project developer is providing as an evidence. If an auditor feels that appropriate evidence has not been provided, they must raise a CL for it and seek proper evidence. Number two is the calculations. So auditors may also choose to recalculate the values using raw data to confirm that they have been calculated accurately. Ideally, the values should be traceable and you should be able to back calculate them. If you're not able to do that, then you may seek justification or explanation from the project developers. Number three is the consistency checks. So you must compare the reported information with previous reports, other relevant project data, or industry benchmarks to identify any inconsistencies or anomalies. If you feel that something is too far away from the industry benchmarks or from other similar projects, you may seek further information on it to ascertain the cause. So you must, number one, trust your intuition. trust your knowledge on the industry benchmarks and the standards and your other experience from similar projects. And you must raise questions to the project developers to justify the values which are achieved. So these inspections at times reveal data inconsistencies at times. Last but not the least, on-site verification, where the auditor finds it necessary, visit the site and verify data directly, even if you have not planned for an on-site visit, usually for that specific project. If you think it is necessary to go on site, then please do that and seek, seek coordination and cooperation from project developers on this. Next slide, please. So now we are going to discuss about a few examples of how the information is reported in the tool and how the VVBs can accurately verify the impact which is being claimed. So we will be talking about a few specific scenarios or issues which crop up pretty often as per our discussion with a lot of you guys. So we have taken these scenarios over here. Number one, we will discuss about handling time discrepancies. So it's a common challenge, managing events that occur outside the official monitoring period, but they are in the same calendar year. As an example scenario, we have taken if there are training sessions which were conducted in January 2024, but the monitoring period for the projects start from June 2024. Would this training be calculated as an impact of this specific monitoring period? The answer is no. Although it has been counted or it has been conducted in the same calendar year, but it is not a part of that monitoring period. So over here, the auditors can, think on three lines or from point of views. Number one is to adhere to the monitoring period start date. So only activities and their associated impacts which are occurring within the monitoring period are to be considered for reporting, nothing outside from this, not before the start date, not after the end date. Second would be justification for inclusion. If and in any rare case, this is a rare case, usually doesn't happen, but if it happens with you, if a project developer is actually justifying that no, I can include this monitoring impact in the SDG impact in this monitoring period, then you need to ask a proper justification so that they can demonstrate a direct relevance and an unavoidable linkage to the project's defined activities. Such cases, like I mentioned, are pretty rare and they need approval from the gold standard on this. Number third would be ensuring consistency. So the auditors need to ensure that the PD is maintaining this application of monitoring period consistently across the monitoring periods and the indicators selected. So this is how you can handle any scenario which involves time discrepancies. Next slide, please. Next scenario, what we have highlighted over here is to evaluate the ongoing indicators. And one of the examples that we've taken is the job creation, because this is a pretty commonly used monitoring indicators wherein the project developers claim the SDG impact of creating more jobs with the project activity. So such indicators require careful assessment over time, because if we are not careful with this assessment, it can result in misrepresentation and at worst overcrediting and overestimation. So over here we have taken an example that a project is generating 7 jobs in the first year. Will the PD report the same number in year 2 also if those 7 people are still employed? The answer is no. And why? Let's talk about it. Number one, this monitoring indicator is about new net jobs. So the focus of this indicator is on the new net jobs created within the reporting period. Second is to talk about the retention metrics. If you need to see and differentiate between the job creation and job retention. Does the indicator target the creation of the jobs or does it also talk about the retention of the jobs? So it should be framed as a number of jobs sustained if the project developer wants to calculate the 7 jobs in the first year in the year 2 as well, and should not count it under created jobs in year 2. So this distinction has to be there. Number 3, Like I mentioned, when this distinction is achieved, then you may ask the project developer to propose a new indicator where we talk about job sustenance or retention rather than job creation, because this will otherwise lead to double counting and inflation of the impact numbers. So thus, in this case, the impact will be 7 jobs created in 5 years and not 7 times 5, which is 35 jobs. Next slide, please. So in addition to the role of the auditors and different scenarios that we had discussed, there are also other essential checks that our auditor should keep in mind. So beyond individual indicators, auditors must also ensure the internal consistencies. They must also see if data and narratives are aligned across the report or not. Number two, they must always check that a double counting is avoided. Is the same impact reported more than once? If yes, then that's a problem. Number three, the auditors must always check the data integrity. They must check, are there systems in place that can prevent errors or manipulation of the data or not. Last point being the transparency. Are limitations and assumptions clearly disclosed or not? Or are there any deviations applicable to current monitoring period? All this has to be transparently reported in the project documentation. Next slide, please. Let us also now discuss one more example to solidify your understanding. So this scenario is a project which is reporting improved access to clean cooking solutions, and they're claiming an impact of 1,500 households. What should be the auditor's action to validate or verify this number? Number one, you must ask for evidence. They can be distribution records, household surveys, photos of installed solutions, or whatever you find is a contextually relevant evidence. Number two would be to verify the methodology. You must confirm the monitoring and reporting procedure which is being used by the project developer, and if it aligns with the MRV guidance in the tool and also with the certified design or not. If you see any discrepancies, you must raise a finding and the PDs must close the findings. Number three is to cross-check the reported information. You must compare the reported numbers with project implementation reports, and you may also check it with beneficiary lists. So you must have a cross-check of the information as well. Number three, the last point, for any specific challenges or if there is any complex scenarios that you encounter during your assessment, you are highly encouraged to write to Gold Standard at help@goldstandard.org so that we can guide you on specific scenarios and how you may deal with it as per the standard provisions. So that is all from my end today. Anna, over to you if there are any more questions.
Thank you so much, Ashika. We have one question in the Q&A box. Could you please brief quickly on any updates or info on the digital SDG impact tool versus the Excel tool?
Okay, so the information for the digital SDG impact tool, currently what is the most important is addition of a lot of monitoring indicators, which is out for public consultation right now. And it will be added not only to the digital SDG impact tool, but also to the Excel-based tool, so that for the project developers or the projects who are still using the Excel-based tool may use those new indicators as well. So it is up for public consultation until mid of August. So I request all of you to go out and review and provide your feedback. And if you also ask me one more update on the digital SDG impact tool, particularly, we have added many more technologies which are eligible under GS4GG, but still were not a part of um, the SDG impact tool. So we have expanded not only the monitoring indicators, but also the technologies which are covered by the tool. And also we are drafting 4 to 5 case studies, which will be releasing after the consultation of the monitoring indicators is over. Those case studies will help the project developers through the entire cycle, and they will guide the project developers on how to choose appropriate and contextually relevant monitoring indicators for different type of project technologies. So this is the major update on the SDG impact tool right now.
Thank you, Anshika. Maybe if you have the link of the public consultation document, please, if you can put it in the Q&A box. Thank you. Okay. Anybody else has any questions? I don't see anything nor hand raised. So I think we can move on to the next topic then. Over to you, Shraddha. Shraddha will be talking about some LUF updates, risks and capacities guidelines, and some rule clarifications. And I think we can start maybe with this little poll, Shraddha. What do you think? I will be launching this right now in Teams. And of course, you can scan the QR code. But the question is, to which sector or sectors do risk and capacities guidelines apply? Is it blue carbon and freshwater wetlands, renewable energy, agriculture and forestry, cook stoves? Please let us know what you think or what you know. You should know. Wait a few seconds. I can also add the link in the Q&A box. Okay, maybe, yeah, there we go. So we have a majority responding agriculture and forestry, and also a big number of people answering on blue carbon and freshwater wetlands. But we don't have risk capacity guidelines for renewable energy and cook stoves. Correct, Shraddha?
Yeah, and let's clear the confusion in the coming slide.
Yeah.
The risks and capacity is initially it was for agriculture and forestry. Now it has been extended to blue carbon and freshwater. So as for now, we have the current new version of risk and capacities for agriculture and forestry, the version 2, and the version 1 for blue carbon and freshwater wetlands. As part of the new documents release, we also have a new template of risk and capacities assessment report, which can be used by both land use and forestry and blue carbon freshwater projects. There's also a newest addition to our team of risk and capacities assessment tool, a non-mandatory tool just to aid for the assessment process. It's optional. Please do have a look on it at the website. And next slide, please, Anna. So what is risks and capacities? Why is it important? Basically, risks and capacities help us to deal with the issue of non-permanence, the issue of reversal, the issue of being release of the carbon stored back into the atmosphere, thereby leading to a reversal event. How does it do that? The risks and capacities have an inherent risk categories known as natural disturbance, political, project management risk, financial risk, market risk, and other risks. These broad categories are further subdivided into several subcategories of risks. And through a scoring system, next slide, please, Anna. Through a scoring system, an evaluation has to be done. The initially identified risks have to be scored on the basis of exposure, vulnerability, and spatial scale. Exposure being the probability of an event to occur, vulnerability being the capacity of the carbon pools to withstand such an event, and spatial scale refers to the extent the project can be affected by a risk event. They are to be scored by 3 being the high probability or high vulnerability, and 0 being the event not unlikely to occur in the critical period. So in this, a risk has to be identified, a proper rationale has to be in place to score the risk. For example, if you're scoring 3, that would mean it's a high probability. So the PD has to provide a specific rationale behind why the scoring is high. Also, in the case when they are scoring it low, like 0 or 1, there should be a very strong rationale in place that why this risk event has a minimal effect on the project. These scores have to be then brought down with the help of, there should be efficient mitigation measures in place to bring down the score, like an exposure having a score of 3, that is a high probability, has to be bring down in a way that the final product of the scores is below 6 or 6. In this case, in the example, the natural disturbance is the risk category, the subcategory 1.8, pest and disease outbreak. They have been scored 3, 2, and 2. The product gives 12, which is much higher than 6. So the project cannot move ahead for design certification. But with the mitigation measures in place, these scores can be brought down. For example, as an example, having proper mitigation in place, the scores are brought down to 2, 1, and 1. The final products give you 2, which is much below 6. And therefore, the project can move ahead for design certification. In the broad categories of risk, the further subcategories, all subcategories should have a score of 6 or below. Otherwise, the project would not move ahead for design certification. Next slide, please, Anna. So, so what's the role of VBB in this assessment? As seen in the previous slide, the table that has to be filled by PD, but the assessment has to be done by a VVB. So the auditor has to check there's adequate identification of risk. All that is identified by the project developer has to be assessed very accurately. The justification of the rationale provided by the project developer in the risk and capacities report has to be assessed by the auditor, whether the rationale is justified, whether the scoring based on the rationale is accurate. They also have to check the rationale with the evidence submitted. There can be photographs, there can be images, there can be a risk mitigation plan in place. So that can be used in evidence and has to be checked by an auditor. The accuracy of mitigation measures should be in place. They cannot just write anything and that can be proved. It has to be assessed by an auditor very religiously so that a proper mitigation plan is in place to avoid any reversal event. So what's the validity of the risk and capacity assessment? It has to be done at the time of validation, and initial risk scoring has to be there at the time of preliminary review based on the initial analysis, and they have to state whether mitigation measures are in place or not. But a very detailed and thorough identification has to be done at the time of validation, and they have to report all the risks and the mitigation measures corresponding to all the subcategories of the risk categories in the assessment report, and that has to be assessed with help of evidence and justification by the VVB. In case of any reversal event, the it has to be reported and proper mitigation measures have to be added in place so that that risk can be avoided in future. The risk and capacity calculation done at the time of validation is then revisited at the time of renewal of design certification. And as stated before, any reversal during the performance review would have to be reported separately. If auditor finds any deficit, like proper evidence is not in place, there's no proper justification, they feel that the scoring and the rationale are not matching, they can raise CAR, FAR, and clarifications for it. If you see on the right side on the slide, there are images of the new document pack for risk and capacity, the guideline, the template, and the optional tool. Next slide, please, Anna. We also have released a rule clarification on application of positive list for LOOF activities. So if you see the current LOOF activity requirements, the positive list includes a mandatory criteria and an optional criteria for forestry and agriculture activities. So what does the optional criteria state? That it should be directly relevant to the project scope and methodology. Adequate justification should be there in the PDD, and it has to be validated by VVB during project validation. So what do we mean by this rule clarification is, like, let's understand this by an example. If there is a rice project which uses a methane reduction from rice cultivation methodology, they cannot apply the criteria of the optional criteria which states there should be 5 native crops in place, because it is more adhered to the agroforestry projects. It is more aligned to the forestry methodology. While it is not directly relevant to the rice methodology, that criteria cannot be used. So what would this mean? The project being non-additional? No. This optional criteria of the positive use is not valid, but the additionality can be demonstrated by other means. For more examples, please do have a look on the document on the website. And next slide, please, Anna. We have also raised a clarification on a crediting period of rice methodology. So we have received numerous queries around this. So the maximum crediting period for rice methodology is 15 years, which is 5 years renewable twice. So what should be assessed at the time of renewal? The baseline scenario and all other relevant methodology parameters. So currently there are 45 projects, 45 projects. Among that, 42 has been listed on the GS registry, 2 have been design certified, and 1 a certified project. So if any questions, please let me know.
Thank you so much, Shraddha. Yeah, is there anybody who has any questions? Yes, Gustavo, you may unmute yourself.
Hello, everyone. Just a
Hi,
question
Gustavo.
about the risk analysis. Doesn't the risk analysis lead to the establishment of a reserve buffer, like in another standards, for example?
So at gold standard, the risk and capacity assessment is not linked with buffer. We have a flat buffer contribution of 20%. The risk and capacity have to be in place so that there's proper mitigation measures and reversal event can be avoided.
No, it's all right. Thank you for the clarification.
Thank you.
Thank you for your question. Okay, any other questions? See, look in the Q&A box. Okay, I don't see anything else. Great. If you have any questions that pop up later, please feel free to ask them later or add them to the Q&A box. Yeah, thank you so much, Shraddha. And I think we can now move to the next section. I'd like to ask Marta to introduce this one. So we'll be talking a little bit about calibration, audit reports, assurance platform, and then some important gold standard requirements, and a lot of fun things that Marta will be introducing to us.
Hello, everyone, and thank you to my colleagues for the great presentations until now. Sorry for the hiccups in sharing my screen. And so the next section is based on, we've been talking to you a lot about the VVB performance assessment. So now that it's gold standard, that does the certification reviews and not sustain cert anymore, we're much more in contact with you, and we're much deeper into the processes that you are involved in, and we would like to leverage this situation to give you more feedback, to give you back more of what more value from the processes that we manage. So we have spoken to the team that manages the certification reviews, and we have identified certain topics that come again and again during these certification reviews. And we want to address some of these in the following section. These are not new topics to you. I'm sure that you know very well about them. I don't pretend to be a better auditor than you are. But I wanted to make sure that we all hear the same presentation and we calibrate between us as auditors. You calibrate between you as auditors, and you raise any questions and suggestions you have on these topics. The objective here is, of course, that we have shorter review times and fewer findings during review, and everybody's happier because of that. So let's dive into this. We're going to talk about how to create very, very good audit reports that are easy to review. Then we'll talk about the role of the VVB in the assurance platform, a reminder and some updates. Then we'll speak about stakeholder consultation and safeguarding principles during verifications, and what to do when you encounter diverging rules in different documents. So let's dive. Let's start with the audit reports. We'll talk about the audit report structure, raising and closing findings, reporting of SDG impact, and as I said, stakeholder consultation and safeguarding principles. Now, audit reports are different according to, for each VVB. Each VVB has its own template, or sometimes they don't even have a template, and an auditor creates their own audit report. And some reports have a lot of text. Some of them are very laconic. Some of them have more information and some of them less. And after reviewing a lot of audit reports, we, of course, created the validation verification standard. And the validation verification standard sets out the requirements for what to do during the audit and what to report. So just as a reminder to you, what would be a great audit report that contains all the information that's necessary for review to happen and for the public to then be able to trace back how the project was assured. An audit report would contain the key project information, so which project this is, which monitoring period this is, where it is located, which methodology it's using, etc. Then it would contain the information of the VVB. And very importantly, on top, like in the very beginning, we will have the SDG impact summary. So what kind of emission reductions or removals impact per year, per vintage and total, and the same for any jobs created or any hours saved or money saved, etc. SDG impact. It's important to put this in the very beginning because this is what then gets transferred to the registry, the gold standard impact registry. And to have everything in the very beginning is it just simplifies the process, and it makes it very easy for you to double check if all the data is entered correctly after each version, each iteration of the audit report. Now, the team structure and competence are also important, so include each person that was involved in the audit and how you have complied with the VVB requirements on audit team competence. Then make sure that you address which applicable regulatory documents you have consulted and what basically which requirements of the standard the project was assessed against. Which activity requirements, which methodology, which versions of these documents, etc. So this is a very important step also to prepare your audit and to make sure for the reviewer that it's clear that you're using the right versions and the right standard documents. Then a risk assessment. Are you going on site? Which kind of sample are you taking? What are the main criteria that you have to evaluate? Which means of validation or verification you're going to use? And then per topic of the validation verification standard, which is, of course, the project description, the project boundary, the demonstration of additionality, the setting of baseline, monitoring plan, all of these topics. And for each point of these topics, you should have, okay, what is the topic? And then what are the means of validation or verification? So how did you check it? The documents and evidence reviewed, justification of these means of validation or verification, the validation verification assessment. So what do you think, is the project compliant or not on this topic? And any findings, is there a CAR or CL or clarification request or forward action request that's resulting from this? You can have the documents and the findings as annexes to the report so that you don't have to look for all the CARs throughout the document, but you have them all in the same place. And at the end, of course, together, I mean, it's nice to put it in the executive summary, but there should be a certification decision concluding the validation verification report. So let's look at how this per topic part of the report looks like with an example. So we'll have the assessment question. For example, is the project description accurate and complete? Then the means of validation would be conducting interviews, checking capacity, nameplates of the equipment, check against manufacturer specifications, and check contracts for equipment purchase. That would be, for example, how you can check the project description where the project has listed the installed capacity and the efficiency and etc. of the equipment. The justification is that triangulation ensures that there is no discrepancy in the information provided in the project description of the PDD. And the assessment, let's say that the PD has provided the wrong manufacturer specifications of some other equipment, some other model, and not the one that was actually purchased. So it cannot be determined if the project description is accurate because you cannot find the efficiency, for example, of the equipment. So then you would have a finding, CAR 1, let's say, that says that the project developer should provide the correct manufacturer specifications document. All right, so that would be an example of how to present this one specific topic in the audit report. Now, speaking of findings and speaking of corrective action requests, let's look again at how to raise findings correctly so that we have as few rounds of closing findings as possible with the project developer, and make it very clear for the technical reviewers at the VVB side and for the certification reviewers at Gold Standard on why you're closing these findings. Now, findings can be corrective action requests, a clarification request, or a forward action request. You know that very well. But something that we keep having to remind ourselves, also the reviewers at Gold Standard, is how to write a really good finding. And the three elements of a finding would be, why are you raising this finding? Meaning, what is the exact requirement, the exact standard requirements against which the project is non-compliant? So it would be great to quote the paragraph or the section of the specific standard document, whether it's a methodology or the principles and requirements or whatever document it is. Quote the paragraph in the section and the document title, and then the project developer knows how to, where to find the right requirement. Then what is the exact issue that you have identified? And at the end, where is that issue in the project developer's documents? So is it in the emission reductions calculation? And if so, in which tab and in which cell, for example, or is it in the PDD, or where is it exactly? Now, for example, this would be a finding that we find quite often. The project developer has provided only brief explanation of why the project is additional. That is not a very good finding because the project developer doesn't really know what is wrong with the additionality assessment. A revised finding would be, for example, Section 3 of the additionality of the applied methodology requires that you apply at a minimum one measure, that the minimum one measure is additional according to the tool for demonstration of additionality of the UNFCCC. Now, the project developer has not used the method specified in the tool, and rather has provided a brief explanation of why the project is additional. And the issue is in sections B1 and B5 of the PDD. Stated like this, the project developer can go back to sections B1 and B5 of the PDD, look at the tool for demonstration of additionality, and follow the steps specified in that tool, and update the PDD accordingly. Another example would be total employment by gender is not indicated in the SDG impact tool and not monitored correctly. Please revise. The revised version would be the design certified monitoring plan in section B7 of the PDD requires SDG 8, total employment by gender, to be monitored annually. So you see, this is not a standard requirement, but the standard was interpreted in the monitoring plan in the PDD in section B7 as saying, okay, we're going to monitor total employment by gender annually to comply with the standard requirements regarding SDG impact. And then you can say these are in cells H58 and H65 of the SDG impact tool. Now, let me stop talking here, and you can let us know in the poll how you can phrase what this issue is exactly with the monitoring of employment by gender. I think Anna could also paste things in the poll.
Yes,
in the
I
chat.
launched. Yeah, I launched the poll and also posted in the Q&A box.
Thank you. So I think I'm going to go back until we have the results of the poll.
Yeah, this might take a few seconds because it's quite some typing. I don't see any responses yet. I hope somebody is. Oh, I see 2 responses now. In
Great.
there.
In the interest
Thank
of time, I would say let's move on. Okay, I still don't see the responses. The job creation is not monitored annually, as it is mentioned in the register PDD and in the monitoring plan, I guess. Statement on the employees gender-wise. Total employment by gender is not monitored annually as required. No register. Yeah, something of the sort. Exactly. So the parameter was not reported in the SDG impact tool, and it is not clear from the evidence provider if it was monitored correctly would be another version of this. So it's important to explain exactly what the issue is. Great. I think this is pretty simple, but just like it, all our lives we learn how to write effective emails and how to write effective reports. Writing findings is, I think, it always merits a reminder or two. And the same thing for closing findings, right? I mean, evidence is provided and references of what the project developer, how the project developer justified the closing of the finding and what documents they provided, how you checked that this provided explanation is correct and complete, and that the documents are well written and consistent, and what your conclusive remarks are. If you close the finding like this, then the reviewer, the technical reviewer at the VVB and our certification reviewers would know that you've closed the finding correctly. And if you cannot write this, then probably the project developer has not closed the finding correctly. But okay, this is enough, I think, on findings. Let's jump to the next recurring topic. Oh, this is an example on how to close a finding, but I think we all know this. Let's skip it. You can see it back in the presentation. Now, the SDG impact reporting, that is something that also is extremely important because that is the basis of the gold standard impact registry. So it's very important that we do this reporting correctly. Let's start with SDGs that are not emission reductions. Just as a reminder, in the project design document, you would have the yearly distribution of the impact. So in this case, how many households would have access to improved cooking or whatever it is, the indicator. And the project design document would list this per year of the project. Of course, the project doesn't need to start on the 1st of January, and the monitoring report might start as well on the 23rd of July. And it might not be, so the year might not run from January to December, and thus, but the impact that they have to report has to be for 2020, 2021, 2022, because this is how it is reported in the SDG tool and in the impact registry, especially for emission reductions. So that means that we need to translate from the PDD year-wise to the monitoring report vintage-wise. And the same goes for the validation report and the verification report. And the vintage would be all the dates within 2020 and how many households were enlisted in the project within 2020, how many in 2021, and how many in 2022, right? So that's the difference between yearly projections and vintages. Now for LUF projects, it gets even more interesting because then apart from listing everything per vintage, we need to list the gross verified removals, then the buffer, the 20% flat buffer that we were talking about just now, and the net emission reductions or removals for issuance. So in this case, we have 110,000 in total gross, 22,000 buffer, and a remaining 88,000 to be issued. This breakdown of gross and buffer and net is extremely important because we don't want to issue all of this on the account of the project developer. This gets issued on the account of the project developer, and this gets issued in the account of the buffer, right? Then we have, for energy projects, we don't have a buffer, but we do have other interesting additions. So just like everywhere, we would have the vintage start and end date. As you see, you can put the start and end date in different columns, or you can put them in the same column. It doesn't matter as long as they are separated by vintage. Then you have the amount achieved. And then you should actually indicate whether there's a gender tag on these credits, whether there is any ADALIs claimed for these vintages, or whether there is any renewable energy certificates claimed for these vintages. If you report all this, then the reporting will be complete for an energy and waste or transport project. All right. Now, speaking of these tables, you would find that it's quite difficult to report on this data because every time you change the calculations, you have to update these tables in the project design document, in the emissions reductions calculation, or in the validation report. And then if there's any findings during review, then the reviewer would have to update also their review form. And all of these have to have consistent data at every point. So many times what we see is that, for example, the monitoring report was updated. Okay, we didn't have 28,000, but 22,000 emission reductions during 2020. But then the verification report was not updated, or the other way around. The emission reductions file was updated, the verification report was updated, but the monitoring report was not updated. In any case, they don't match. And that is not acceptable. So the verification report and the monitoring report always have to match. So as a rule, we need to verify the figures across all of the documents and make sure they're the same. So it's the project design document, validation report, and ER sheet, or monitoring report, verification report, and ER sheet. They all have to have the same numbers. On top of that, we need to check again with every new version of any document. For example, when the project developer closes a car during the audit, or when the VVB closes a car during the certification review. Because if any of these changes, then all the other documents have to reflect that change. Then you should really check all the SDGs and not just the emission reductions. You can make such mistakes also with the number of proportion of households as we have here. And thankfully here, everything is reported in a consistent manner. This is extremely important, as I said, because issuance depends on this. And if we don't have consistent information, we might issue the wrong amount of credits to the project. That is very, very onerous to go back and fix afterwards. So you would have had all these very, very extensive audit where you've done a great job in correcting everything, and just because of a typo, then we issue the wrong amount of credits. That should not happen. And now, if you really want to be a pro auditor, once you have received your review form and you're closing a car, and you have the final certification review form, make sure that the reviewer updates that table as well. Just as a hint from me, not your job, of course. So, but the bottom line is always check that all these documents show the same figures. Now, very quickly, the role of the VVB in the assurance platform. You know that we have introduced a new assurance platform as a substitute to a sustained standards assurance platform that was used before. And this introduces the VVB in the very center of the assurance process, as it should have been. Before, the reviewer would communicate directly with the project developer, and now the project developer passes the documents to the VVB submits to the reviewer, and the reviewer communicates with the VVB directly. The same as the SDG tool, actually, the digital SDG tool. Now, the VVB can also see project information and previous requests in the platform, which wasn't possible before. You can accept and reject audit requests within the platform. You can download and review documents related to the project, including, for example, the previous review form, so that you see if there's any forward action requests pending from the previous review. You can upload required audit documentation and reports and respond to reviewer findings and re-upload documents. Now, if you don't have access and you need access, you can submit a form. Now we have a form to manage access to the assurance platform and to the digital SDG impact tool. And we also have updated the VVB user manual. Now, one important thing that the team asked me to share with you, please do not share account credentials. It should be that one auditor has one login. The reason for this is that anything that you change on the assurance platform cannot be undone afterwards. And there is a log of who has logged in and who has made what changes, and you will be accountable for the changes you're making. So if you need more access for a colleague, please go to your VVB manager or your admin, who's responsible for communication with Gold Standard. And if you are a manager or an admin, please make sure you're monitoring and managing your auditor's platform access correctly. So one important thing to note is who uploads documents. We still have, of course, it's a transition period, so we still have a little bit of misunderstanding here. So the project developer can upload their documents and should upload their documents before they assign the project to a VVB. The moment they are selecting a VVB, they need to have uploaded the first version of the project design document and the emission reduction calculations and so on and so forth, so that the audit can start. Now, after the VVB has conducted the audit and closed all the findings with the project developer, they submit the project for certification review. The first step is completeness check. But in that process of submission, the VVB has to upload the validated and verified project developer documents. So the ones that these but updated after all the findings of the audit have been closed, and the validation verification report. Why it is important for the VVB to upload this and not the PD is because of this discrepancy that happens often. So these documents should be the ones that are the ones that correspond to that version of the validation verification report. And the same thing happens here. So when we have findings in the review process, if the findings are only for the VVB revises and re-uploads the validation or verification report. And if the findings are for the project developer and require changes in the project developer's document, then the VVB assesses these document changes and revises the validation verification report and re-uploads both the project developer documents and the validation verification report. We have a user manual that you can check out. This is now in version 2, so it's updated and published on the website. Please do check it out whenever you have any questions for the assurance platform. Now, something I like a couple of topics that come up again and again because of the difference between gold standard and other carbon standards is how to verify safeguards and stakeholder input. And you will say, but why do you need to verify them if they're only relevant for validation? And no, that's not true. In gold standard, actually, there's continuous input and grievance mechanism, so stakeholder consultation throughout the lifetime of the project. So this continuous input and grievance mechanism is described in the stakeholder consultation requirements. And the requirements for validation of it are to decide on a method for the input and grievance mechanism, to communicate that method to stakeholders and identify concerns to still be mitigated during implementation. And once this is done during validation, at verification stage, what the auditor needs, the project developer needs to do is to report in annual reports and monitoring reports on this input and grievance mechanism. So has any stakeholder said anything about the project during this time? And report on any concerns identified during project implementation. So anything that had to be mitigated, and report on any feedback from the grievance mechanism. So were there any complaints? How were they addressed, etc. And all of this needs to be checked during verification. And many verification reports simply don't mention the grievance mechanism, or they don't mention how the grievance mechanism was checked and when. Many times you might need to check with stakeholders on site and say, hey, did you express any concerns to the project developer during this time? Because the project developer might just say, no, there was no comments, whereas there were actually complaints from the local community. So very important to verify the continuous input and grievance mechanism. And in terms of safeguarding principles assessment, we have, oh, excuse me, wrong. We have the two scenarios. If the safeguarding principles assessment question is marked as no or not applicable by the project developer, you need to validate during validation that the assessment is correct. And if it's correct, then there's nothing to do in verification. That's fine. But if it's marked as potentially or yes, or it has to be by standard requirement regularly reassessed, then you validate the mitigation approach in the monitoring plan during validation. And then in verification, you check if the implementation was correct, if the mitigation was monitored, the mitigation approach, if it was monitored, and if the indicators are within the preset tolerances. So for example, if it's about noise pollution, if the noise has been below the limit set in the monitoring plan, which is, let's say, 50 decibel. So this, as you see, the safeguarding principles assessment is conducted during validation, but there is still stuff to do in verification for the project developer and for the auditors. So please don't forget that bit during the project. And finally, let's talk about what happens if we have differing rules in different standard documents. So sometimes the rules are not exactly the same in the principles and requirements or activity requirements or the methodology. That's because the principles and requirements apply to all projects. So for example, the principles and requirements document or the site visit requirements or the VVS. Then we have activity requirements that apply to just a fraction of projects. For example, the community services requirements or renewable energy or land use and forestry requirements. And then we have a methodology that applies to an even smaller fraction of projects. So the specificity increases as we go down in this hierarchy, which means that if the principles and requirements or the site visit requirements say one thing and the methodology says another thing, you need to follow the methodology because that's more specific, right? So let's see a few examples. TPA Tech is a very widely used methodology from Gold Standard, and it has specific requirements for site visit and for sampling and for how many VPAs you can sample within validation or verification. And when there is a discrepancy with the site visit and remote audit requirements or the sampling plan, you need to follow the TPA Tech requirements. Okay? This was the last thing from me. Oh, there's my slide. So make sure that you follow TPA Tech requirements whenever necessary. Apologies, these were slides that we don't need to look at today, but I want to invite you to share any questions that you might have, questions and comments.
Yes, there is one question about the assurance platform, but I'm not sure I completely understand it, but I will read it. The PD can be allowed to assign the VVB only after uploading the validation verification report to the assurance platform. Oh, thank you, Srikant, for editing it. The PD can be allowed to assign the VVB only after uploading the validation verification report to the assurance platform.
Is that a bug in the system? Is that true? Because the validation verification report is an obligatory document? If that is the case, it would be really great if you submit this as feedback to help at Gold Standard, and we will make sure to correct this.
Yeah, because the project developer needs to assign the VVB in the platform, right? So that the VVB then can take over the request.
And it could be that for some reason, because it's an obligatory document, because it's an obligatory document, the PD cannot proceed if that is not there. So until then, please advise the project developer to just submit an empty document. Don't use that for anything else. And please submit that feedback, and we'll try to fix it as soon as possible. That should not be the case. Did I understand your question correctly?
Please feel free to raise your hand. No. Okay, I guess it's clarified. Great. There you go. Yes. 1 second. Please go ahead.
Yeah. Hi, Martha. Hi, Anna. Am I audible?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. So basically, this is I handle the two projects in specific case. The client has faced the issue. Basically, he was not able to assign the VVB, and the reason was they have mentioned that without the validation or verification report, we are not able to assign the VVB. Okay, so then because my understanding is the validation of verification report is supposed to be submitted by the VVB.
Of course.
Right. So we had urgent case, but then we had submitted documents to the client. Then we then we submit documents to the GS through assurance platform. But when I see the slide, that is clearly showing that the PD can assign the VVB after uploading the basic documents such as the PDD or MR, the documents. Yes. So can you just clarify this?
Yes. So in principle, the platform should work in such a way that the project developer can create a request before they even have contracted a VVB. So they should not be required to upload a validation or verification report. We will take this feedback back to our team. It would be great if you also write to help desk with that specific case for which project exactly it was. But indeed, the project developer should be able to assign a VVB without submitting a report.
Okay,
so this is a bug.
Thank you so much. And anyway, there are two more projects coming up now. So I'll check now. In case of which I'll drop an email to help desk. Sure. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you for the question. Okay, let me see the Q&A box. We have another question about the assurance platform access. Could you please clarify whether any gold standard auditor needs permission from the VVB admin, personnel, or management to request an account for the assurance platform? In this page, there is a link that allows anyone, PD, VVB, to request an account. Good question.
Yes, I mean, in general, the VVB manager should know who, which auditors or which VVB staff or which VVB associated people have access to the assurance platform, because the liability lies with the VVB. So anyone can request an account, but we do check with the VVB management. Correct, Anna?
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
In the background, we do a background check. So you can request, and you might be denied if the VVB manager denies that request.
Yeah, that's correct. So when we receive a request together with the admin team in the Gold Standard, I work with them on checking, is this auditor approved? Is it part of this VVB? And if we are not sure, then we will reach out to the VVB manager and ask, who is this person? Does it work for you? What type of access will they need, and why would they need access? So it's quite controlled on our side as well. So it's not like we receive a request and we're adding anybody into the account, because that would pose high risks for securities for us, but also for the VVB account. Okay, I hope that clarified, Laila. I don't see any more questions. So maybe we can move on to the next part, the last one. We have a few more slides with a couple more news and updates, specifically on trainings, and then methodologies with alignments with Article 6.4. So I'd like to give the word to Joanna now.
Thank you so much, Anna, and it's a pleasure to be here. So this is a very big announcement. So we are pleased to announce the in-person calibration workshops for this year. One is going to take place in New Delhi, India, and the other one is to be defined shortly. So these are the dates. So in the New Delhi is going to be on the 17th and 18th of September, and the other one is going to take place in October 21st and 22. And here the purpose is pretty much to present topics like latest requirements and updates of GS4GG, also project review issues that were identified during the VB performance assessment, and also project reviews, some best practices of validation and verification, and also some updates on the alignment of the Article 6.4 of our standard. So please stay tuned. For the ones that have not filled in the form, the expression of interest form, please do so. There's a kind reminder as well, and send it to us so we can have an idea about who's participating and what, and also please share with us which topics would you like to address during that workshop. So yes, these are so the news that we have. So happy to receive more expression of interest forms in case you haven't done so far. The next exciting announcement that I have for you is that we are also pleased to announce a new initiative of Gold Standard to support national capacity building in Ghana. This is as part of an ongoing collaboration with the Ghana government and the Ghana Carbon Market Framework. And the objective of this training is to build the technical capacity of the local experts to contribute to audits under the GS4GG requirements. And we aim also to foster smooth and meaningful collaboration between these local experts in the region and also with GS approved VVBs. So crucial elements of this training, of course, includes, for instance, how to conduct effective stakeholder consultations, also application of safeguarding principles, and also evaluation of and reporting of SDG impacts, and so on and so forth. So this a couple of examples of the training content that we are delivering. So we have 6 sessions in total. And these are taking place from 17th of June, so this is ongoing until the 16th of October 2025. Thank you.
Great, thank you so much. Super excited. We are very, very excited about this trainings. Hope you're too, and hope to see you and meet you in person in any of these locations. Great. I'd like to give the word again to Marta for a couple of more information about GS4GG methodologies alignments with Article 6.4.
Thank you, Anna. And let me So can you change the slides yourself? So
of
we don't do
course.
the sharing. So as you all know, Article 6.4 is the follow-up of the clean development mechanism. And of course, Gold Standard is aligning to the developments of the carbon market in this new Paris Agreement world. And I wanted to present to you things that are coming up and how busy we have been with that. So Article 6.4 will change the way that projects are developed in the carbon market in general, in many different aspects. So in terms of additionality assessment, how to set baselines, how you account for leakage, lock-in is a new very important concept. And we're working on all these aspects. We have already published, and they are applicable already from the 1st of July, the methodology development requirements and the standard for how to require additionality assessment within methodologies. So all of these standards that we're developing here are methodology related standards. So these are rules on how to develop methodologies. Now, after publication of the standards, which follows stakeholder consultation, we will have all methodologies, new methodologies following these standards, and then we will also update the existing methodologies to comply with these standards. So after publication and applicability, you would still have quite a bit of time before the new methodologies come online, and then the projects start applying these methodologies, and then they apply for audits. So it's going to probably be at least a year until you see any audits applying these standards. But I just wanted to make sure that you know that this is going on, and this is going to be the new way in which you will have to audit additionality and baseline and all these very, very basic concepts that we have known and applied for the last 15, 20 years. So I encourage all of you to look at these documents, because we will have to really do paradigm shift between the old world and the new world as carbon professionals. So apart from the additionality assessment, we are now publishing for stakeholder consultation the baseline setting methodology standard, and an extremely important standard that Gold Standard is very proud of introducing on suppressed demand. Suppressed demand, as you know, has to do with underserved communities and how to bring more carbon finance to those. And we're very, very keen to have your comments as the people on the ground that have experience with how things are actually assessed and whether it's feasible to verify them. So please provide your comments for these documents until the 6th of August for baseline, and a month from now, so until almost the end of August on suppressed demand. We're very keen to hear from you. And also check this space for new requirements coming up for leakage and lock-in. All right, Anna, back to you. Oh yeah, we also had another training last month at the end of June, which might be interesting to some of you if you have missed it. We covered two important topics. One was on fraction of non-renewable biomass, which is very important for cookstoves and biogas and water and sanitation projects. And also we covered the core carbon principles labeling, so the ICVCM requirements and how we will mark projects as CCP compliant. So if you want to learn about this, please check out the webinar recording. Anna, back to you.
Yes, thank you so much, Marta. Okay, yeah, we are now, if you have any questions, please feel free to raise your hand. We have a few minutes. I think we can take one or two questions tops. I just answered a question in the chat about access to the assurance platform. So if a GS approved auditor only can have access to the platform, ideally the access to the platform should be for the GS approved auditor who needs, if they need to perform any actions in the platform during project reviews. But if there is a need that a colleague in a different department for QA QC needs to have access for reporting and such things, then we would appreciate if the VVB manager would reach out to us and inform us so that we can assess it together, and if needed, then provide access, of course. So we have that sort of flexibility, but we want to have, of course, the approval of the manager, or the request needs to come from the VVB manager, who is also the admin of the platform. So I hope that clarified. And still don't see any hand raised, so I guess we can wrap up the session. So I just would like to show you this slide, but I'm not going to read through it because it's a bunch of links. Basically, all the information we have given in this presentation, and it's a lot of information, so we are aware of that. You can just click here. There is all the links that we mentioned. And of course, as a reminder, if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to us to at vvb@cosana.org, but also at help@cosana.org. And last but not least, before you leave, we really appreciate if you could hear your feedback about today's session. It's really important for us to hear from you if this session was okay, what needs to be improved, what can we do better. So here is your chance. It really takes a second or maybe a minute or two to fit it out, but it's extremely important for us. So I'm also going to paste the link in the chat, in the Q&A box, and of course you can scan the QR code. And in the meanwhile, while you're busy with this, I'd like to thank all of you for joining, for your amazing questions, and also our speakers for presenting this information, quite important and difficult information in such a short time. An hour and a half is never enough for all the updates that we want to give. So yeah, thank you so much, and please submit your feedback. It's anonymous, and I wish you all a really nice day, and see you soon. See you maybe in India or at the other location in our face-to-face workshops. Thank you so much. Bye.
Bye, everyone.